So after a month off, Bellator is back with Bellator 282 from the Mohegan Sun over there in Connecticut. And I just don't understand why Bellator doesn't do more cards, especially in the summer. Only 3 cards in the summer. We've got this one in Connecticut, the next month to Tacoma, Washington, for a main event fight between Pitbull and Sydney Outlaw for the championship over there at lightweight. Then Douglas Lima and Jason Jackson are in the co-main event, which is likely number one contenders fight at 170, at least I think so. And then they're going to Sioux Falls for Gochi Yamuchi and Neiman Gracie in August, but only 3 cards for them, only 1 month, or only 1 card a month for Bellator in the summer, which is just crazy because they could find fighters to fill out cards. Anyway, though, this weekend, Mousasi and Eblen in the main event for the middleweight world championship, and then 2 fights with the bantamweight Grand Prix. Of course, we're talking about Leandro Higo and Danny Sabatello in the co-main event, and Magomedov and Enrique Barzola, the other tournament fight as well. And folks, if you haven't not yet, make sure that subscribe button down below for some more MMA here on the channel. We posted our PFL Week 5 predictions earlier today, and also we posted our UFC Fight Night Sarukian versus Gamrot predictions yesterday. Both those links are in the description down below. Let's now get into the Bellator 282 predictions. So our first 4 fights will start with Bryce Logan and Mendonca. I think Nalo's going to win this one. I think we get it done by TKO. Bryce Logan's 0-2 so far in Bellator, and his last loss wasn't great to Mike Hamill. Hamill's a guy who was, 7-5 going into that fight, and given he'd fought some good fighters to that point, we're talking about Adam Borks and Usman Nurmagomedov, but I mean, Bryce Logan probably, going into that fight, he's expected to win. He didn't beat Karahanian in his first fight in Bellator either, so he's 0-2, taking on Mendonca. Nalo's a guy who, a lot of people are backing him to beat Nick Brown. I took Brown, people call me crazy, but Nalo ended up losing by TKO in the second round. He had some fights in Bellator previous to that. He was 3-1 in the promotion up to the Brown fight. I think he should be able to bounce back here with the victory over Bryce Logan. Next up, we've got the not PFL, Bellator debut of Aaron Jeffrey. Really excited for him. Of course, the long-time CFFC fighter, or actually only 2 fights over there, but still, he's been fighting a lot outside, of course, a major promotion. Finally gets his shot with the major promotion. He had 2 fights in the Contender Series with the UFC, losing them to Brendan Allen and Caio Barrajo, but I beat Rex Harrison's last fight in CFFC, retaining his middleweight championship, winning it by unanimous decision. He had won that title before fighting Barrajo in the Contender Series, and he owns a win in LFA against a guy in the UFC now who I didn't think he was going to do all that well, but Andre Petroski's 3-0 in the UFC, and Aaron Jeffrey beat Petroski in LFA in a main event. He TKO'd him in the second round. Aaron Jeffrey, his opponent's going to be Fabio in this one. Fabio's a guy who is 1-1 in Bellator so far, picking up a split decision victory over Taylor Johnson in his last fight with the promotion. I mean, he's got good hands in Fabio. He might be able to, stun at Jeffrey in some points of this fight, but Aaron Jeffrey's such a good striker. He's able to keep his distance when he needs to. When you saw his last fight when he beat Rex Harris, I don't think he's going to have any problems in this fight, so that's why I got Aaron Jeffrey to win this one by unanimous decision, probably 30-27. Next up, pretty easy fight to pick, one of the easiest ones on the card. Lucas Brennan taking on Johnny Soto. Brennan's undefeated, is 6-0. Bellator's building him up very slowly because he's had all 5 of his fights, or 6 of his fights, so far in the Bellator cage. He's fighting Johnny Soto, who lost his last fight in Bellator. He beat Weber Almeida in his first fight in the promotion, where he's a big underdog. He won, and then he lost the second fight, and they booked him against Cody Law. He had to pull out that fight. We're going to talk about Cody Law in just a couple seconds here, but Lucas Brennan's not losing this fight. They're pretty high on him over there in Bellator. Brennan will come in there. He'll take down Soto immediately, and he will submit him in the first round. Pretty confident in that one. In their final at the first 4, we got Dan Moret taking on Moda. I think ever so slightly, I'm going to take Dan Moret. I don't feel great about this one. Of course, Moret, the former UFC fighter, went 0-3 in the promotion before bouncing back. He had the big win over Gochi Yamuchi, and Yamuchi, of course, is now a guy who is going to be fighting in the main event in Sioux Falls in a couple months against Neiman Gracie. So Moret owns the win over him. Then he lost to Spike Carlisle in that crazy fight last December, Bellator 272, but I do still think he'll have just enough to beat Moda in this fight. Moda's coming off back-to-back losses to Derek Anderson and Mike Hamill. He beat Mendonca in his first fight in the Bellator cage and lost to Austin Hubbard in his last fight in LFA for the lightweight championship. Hubbard was a big underdog in that fight, finished Moda with about 50 seconds left in that fight. I mean, the guy's 1-3 in his last 4. Yes, he has the win over Nala, where he just kicked the ever-living hell out of Nala's legs. I think Moret should be able to win. His record, does look salty at 15-7, but you gotta look at the types of opponents Moret has been fighting. I think he's gonna win, and I think he's gonna get it done by decision. And this is your lock of the night. Cody Law versus James Gonzalez. Cody Law is one of the hyped-up prospects that Bellator has got. He is undefeated in the promotion. He's had all 6 of his fights. Like Luke Lucas Brennan in Bellator. He's been able to finish most of them except for one. Most of them are by TKO. He's got one Darce choke exception win when he won a Bellator 250, but all of his fights have been post-pandemic, and he's looked very good in all of them. He was minus 1,800 in his last fight win when he beat James Adcock. But he's fighting James Gonzalez in this one. Gonzalez is the guy who lost the last fight in Ring of Combat by split decision when he was challenging for the Ring of Combat Bantamweight Championship. They brought him in so he can get smashed, brother, by Cody Law, and Cody Law's not gonna out-wrestle him. He's just gonna knock him out in the first round. Gonzalez, he's fought some good guys in the past, but he's lost them both. Most of those good guys he has fought. I'm talking about Mike Trezano. I'm talking about Bill Algeo. Yeah, this is gonna be no trouble for Cody Law. He's gonna come in here. He's gonna knock out Gonzalez in the first round. Next up, we have got Lara Joanne taking on Alejandro Lara. For Joanne, she's 1-2 in Bellator so far. Her only victory comes in 2019 when she knee-barred Bec Rawlings, but Bec Rawlings coming into that fight had a losing record, and she's still got a losing record, and apparently Bec Rawlings is going to be bare-knuckle boxing Britain Hart again. In 4 days, apparently. Okay, I don't keep up with bare-knuckle at all. All I've seen is that Greg Hardy signed with them. But anyways, that's her only win so far in Bellator. She's 1-2. She lost to Watanabe after that, and then she lost to Vanessa Porto by split decision. I think Alejandro Lara is going to be able to win this fight. I think she's a better fighter. I know she has lost back-to-back fights to Kana Watanabe and to Deanna Bennett. Now, did I think she was going to lose the Bennett fight? Didn't think so, but she's better than Joanne here. Lara's had a lot of fights in Bellator, and she's only lost the best fighters that they do offer. Lamale McFarlane and Juliana Velasquez. She had that close fight with Velasquez, losing by split decision. And given Lara really hasn't beat anyone great in Bellator so far, she beat Taylor Turner, who was 4-5 at the time, and then she beat Ortega, who was 5-3 at the time. But I still think she'll be able to win the fight. Her striking's pretty good. It's better than her opponents. I think she'll be able to win this one by decision. Yeah, going with Lara to get the victory. Really fun fight now between Sabah Homasi and Maicon Mendonca. For Mendonca, of course, he had that Fight of the Year fight in 2020, winning the LFA Welterweight Championship. And then he was signed to Bellator after losing to Jaleel Willis in his first fight by unanimous decision. He's going to be taking on Sabah Homasi. And Homasi, since being cut from the UFC with those back-to-back losses to Abdullah Al-Hassan, bounced back by winning 3 straight fights in Bellator. Then he ran to Paul Daly, which he lost. He lost fight against Korshov after that, and then beat Jaleel Willis by arm triangle choke in the first round. And again, MMA math would suggest that Homasi, with his last win being Willis, or last fight being Willis, with a victory over Willis, and Mendonca's last fight being a loss to Willis, that Homasi should be able to get the victory. Of course, MMA doesn't always work like that, but I think Sabah Homasi is going to win this fight. Mendonca does eat a lot of damage. If you watch his Fight of the Year fight against the Mongolian Falcon over there in LFA, he eats a lot of damage from his opponent. That when he wins the fight, he wins the LFA Welterweight Championship. But the Mongolian Falcon's a guy who fights at 155. He fought Spike Carlisle afterwards, and then he's fighting at 160, his last LFA fight in November. But if he's eating all that damage from a guy who's fighting at 155, usually fights 155, Sabah Homasi, again, if Mendonca takes that damage from Sabah Homasi, he's going to get knocked out. So eventually, I think Homasi will be able to touch the chin. This fight's going to be crazy because, again, both these guys swing. I think Sabah Homasi, though, is going to be able to win this fight. I think he'll get it done by second round TK. Next up, Anatoly Tokov taking on Muhammad Abdullah. This fight isn't competitive. It's just not at all. Tokov's going to win this fight. He's going to win it pretty quickly. I think he's going to take Abdullah down, and I think he's going to submit him. Tokov's really good. He's undefeated in Bellator. The guy's 6-0 in the promotion. He's coming off a split decision win in his last fight. We're sure, did you think he was gonna win that fight more convincingly? Maybe. But Muhammad Abdullah's a guy who is, he's 2-2 in his last 4 fights. He's fought, once in the last 4 years. And he beat a guy who's 13-9, Eric Lozano, who's 13-9, who's now 14-20 now. He lost to Bahamazi before that. He lost to Daquan Townsend back when Daquan Townsend was fighting in WXC, and I think that's where I think Daquan Townsend's back in that promotion. No, he's now fighting in B2 Fighting Series. Okay, he beat a guy who was 13-4 to win their championship. Anyways, it's besides the point. Muhammad Abdullah does not stand a chance against Tokov here, and Anatoly Tokov should be able to take Abdullah down and submit him immediately. Bellator knows what they're doing. They're trying to pad Tokov's record even more. He's not losing this fight. He is a huge favorite for a reason. He's sitting at minus 575 right now. I, again, only anticipate that to go even more towards the direction of Tokov. He's going to win this fight, and he will submit Muhammad Abdullah in the first round. So, when is Kat Zingano going to fight Chris Cyborg? Because I think she's going to beat Pam Sorenson. Sorenson is, she's past her prime at this point in her career. She lost to Arlene Blenko in her last fight. She's barely winning fights against Roberta Samad. Yeah, this is a win for Kat Zingano. Kat Zingano is going to win this fight. I'm just more concerned of when Kat Zingano is going to finally fight Chris Cyborg. I know she doesn't really want to do it. In her first 2 fights in Bellator, she fought fighters no one's ever heard of, and Olivia Parker and Gabrielle Holloway, right? I mean, those are, Gabrielle Holloway is a fighter who is now 6-6, who, she fought in Bellator in 2017. Then Olivia Parker is a fighter who now is, was on the PFL Challenger Series. She lost her fight. She was in Invicta, lost to Chelsea Chandler. Zingano should be fighting higher levels of opponents, and Pam Sorenson, given, is that level of an opponent. But Sorenson is just, she's 36 now. She was in her prime when she was beating Jessica Rose Clark in Invicta in 2016. She beat Nico Montano back in King of the Cage in 2016. Again, Sorenson she's not that good anymore at this point of her career. Zingano's better than her, and Zingano is 39, but Zingano's still got a lot left in the tank than Pam Sorenson, and Kat Zingano at every single point of her career could beat Pam Sorenson. So what's to say at this point in her career anything's different? I'm going with Kat Zingano to win this fight by unanimous decision. I think her striking's better. On the ground, I think she should be able to out-grapple Pam Sorenson as well. All around, Zingano is the better fighter. She's going to win this one by unanimous decision, and it's just a matter of if she wants to fight Chris Cyborg next, because the opportunity is knocking. If she says, okay, I want Chris Cyborg next for the World Championship, Scott Coker and Bellator will gift her that opportunity. It's just a matter of if Zingano wants that fight, because it's right there for her. She will beat Pam Sorenson though, and she'll get it done by unanimous decision. Next up, we have got a very fun fight between Brent Primus and Alexander Shabliy, one of the closer ones to predict on this card, and I think, other than a fight coming up in 2 fights, this is one of the closest fights to predict on this entire card, because Shabliy is a guy who, again, has not lost in a while. He's 21-3. He is undefeated in the Bellator cage. His last loss comes to a split decision loss in ACB back in 2016. The guy has been running through opponents. Recently, he beat Alfie Davis in his first fight in the promotion, where Davis was ranked number 9 in that fight, but Shabliy beats him by unanimous decision, and then he runs right through Bobby King, beating him by unanimous decision. And of course, his opponent Brent Primus has a victory over a guy who's going to be headlining the Ireland card in September in Benson Henderson. He won his last fight by unanimous decision over Benson Henderson, and he lost to Islam Magomedov by split decision before that. But Primus is a really good fighter. His only losses again in Bellator are to Islam and to Michael Chandler. Of course, Primus is the former Bellator lightweight champion. He beat Michael Chandler in that fight where Chandler had the eye injury, and then of course, Primus wins the championship off of that, and they don't fight until 18 months later, where Michael Chandler wins it by unanimous decision pretty convincingly. But Primus, of course, is the former champion here at Bellator. He beat Chandler that first time on a technicality 2 minutes into the fight. But I think it's a close one to him and Shabliy. I think Shabliy should be able to win, though. Shabliy is able to mix it up on the feet really well and on the ground too, to the point where I think he's the all-around better fighter than Brent Primus at this point in both these guys' career. Primus is getting up there. He's part of that, that Bellator, I don't know how to put it, but the Bellator era when Michael Chandler was the champion, when Michael Chandler was their biggest star. Again, Primus is 37, Shabliy's 29. I think Shabliy's the younger fighter. I think he's the more well-balanced fighter. I think he's just quicker than Brent Primus, honestly, at this point. And if Shabliy has to mix it up in the wrestling, I think he can do so as well, even though Primus does have a pretty good jiu-jitsu game, so I don't know if Shabliy's going to want to enter the guard of Primus or enter a ground fighting game with Primus. But on the feet, I do like Shabliy. I think he's quicker. I think he's got more power. You've seen the knockouts that he does have in Fight Nights Global and in ACB. I'm going with Alexander Shabliy to beat Brent Primus. I don't think he's going to get a finish, but I think he will beat him by unanimous decision. Interesting spot here for Cassius Kane. He's going to be coming into his Bellator debut fighting Brennan Ward. Kane's a guy who's been around for a while. He's been fighting since 2013. He's, bounced around between promotions. We're talking King of the Cage, RFA, Victory FC, fought in LFA. He's been having some troubles recently. He picked up a win on DCS in his last fight 2 months ago in Dynasty Combat Sports. He won a fight over Montreal James, a fighter who is 3-9 now. So, he does what he's supposed to do. He beats him by unanimous decision. But for Kane, again, he lost in LFA 3 times coming up to these fights in DCS. He just hasn't had the success in LFA, and now he's going to be getting Brennan Ward, a guy who hasn't been, as active as Bellator would like him to be, obviously. Only one fight in the last 5 years, and it's the knockout win over Brendan Bell earlier this year at Bellator 274. Bell, again, is a fighter who was 10-10 at the time. That's what Ward was supposed to do to him. He's supposed to knock him out. He's going to get back on track or continue the success. He's going to knock out Kane pretty quickly in this fight. I don't see it going any other way. Kane really shouldn't be in there with Brendan Ward. I'm surprised Ward's only at -240. I think it's just the inactivity that Ward has displayed recently is why this fight is that close in the odds, even though -240 is over a 2-1 favorite. But I just think it would be a lot more if Ward had been more active over the last couple of years. Still, though, he's better than Kane. Kane's 12-7. Ward's 15-6. Brendan Ward's going to find the chin early, and he's going to knock out Cassius Kane to win this fight, and he'll get it done in the first round. So here we go. It is now in the Bantamweight Grand Prix. Enrique Barzola taking on Magomedov. Okay, I'll say my prediction right away. I'm taking Enrique Barzola. I think Barzola is able to win this fight. I think he'll get it done by decision. Now, both these guys have not fought 5 rounds in Bellator. And I don't think Magomedov's ever fought 5 rounds in his career. At least it's been a while. And same with Barzola too. Both these guys entering unknown territory here in a 5-round fight. And I think Barzola's got the better conditioning in this one. I think Barzola is more equipped to go 5 rounds than Magomedov. And now, I think Barzola is able to keep it competitive on the ground to the point where he's not being submitted by Magomedov, and not where like they're going to the ground and Magomedov is submitting him instantly. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Barzola is able to fight up the ground game that Magomedov will bring, okay? And I think Barzola is going to be able to keep it standing for points to the fight, to the point where I think Barzola is going to have some success in the feet, and I think Barzola is going to be striking at range. I think he's going to be doing damage on Magomedov, and I think he's making it very tough on Magomedov to have success in this fight. When you look at Barzola's last fight, when he beats Nikita Milikov by unanimous decision, he looks good in that fight. And same the Darren Caldwell fight too. I mean, he finishes him on the ground in the 3rd round by TKO. Magomedov's coming off the loss to Raufeon Stotts. Now we know how good Raufeon Stotts is. Stotts is a guy, of course, now the Bellator interim champion after beating Juan Archuleta with that brutal head kick knockout finish in the 3rd round. Stotts is really good. Don't get me wrong, and I think if Stotts fought Sergio Pettis on the night, I think Stotts would still probably be the champion right now. He'd just be the undisputed Bellator bantamweight champion of the world. But Magomedov just ran into the wrong guy on that one night in Raufeon Stotts. But we know what Magomedov's trying to do in all his fights. He's trying to drag fights to the ground. He's trying to get a submission. I think Barzola is competitive enough on the ground and competitive enough with his defensive jiu-jitsu to not get submitted by Magomedov. And I think Enrique Barzola is going to win this fight. I think he'll out-condition and he'll outlast Magomedov in this fight. I think he'll outstrike Magomedov. And I think he's going to do it by unanimous decision, moving Enrique Barzola on to the next round of the Bellator Bantamweight Grand Prix, moving him on again at a plus 130 underdog. We are going with Enrique Barzola. I'm a big fan of Danny Sabatello. I've jumped on the hype train early. I'm really big on this guy. I mean, I'm surprised at minus 625 favorite in this one. I think Sabatello might have talked his way into those odds being that, but I mean, his fighting backs it up. Sabatello's really good. You look at his first fight in the UFC, and I put over his victories in Titan FC a lot too. I put over his victory in the Contender Series where he beats Taylor Moore, and the UFC doesn't offer him a contract, but he's, of course, the former Titan FC Bantamweight champion. He beats Ricardo Ramos for the championship. He defends it against Damulin Blackshear, who's a fighter who is pretty good. I think Blackshear's one of these guys who keeps on winning. He'll get a shot in the Contender Series. He's the CFFC champion now, too. The guy's really good, and Sabatello disposed of him, beating him by unanimous decision. So he comes into the Bellator. He beats Brett Johns in his first fight in the promotion. He's a big underdog in that one. He upsets Johns. He beats him by unanimous decision, and then he goes into the Jornal Lugo fight. He's a heavy favorite in that one. Sabatello out wrestles Lugo. He just dominates someone on the ground. It's the constant pressure out of Danny Sabatello that wins him fights. Sabatello's really good on the ground, man. He's just constant pressure down there, and ATT has been struggling to find winning fighters as of late. They've, had a rough, spell of things recently, especially over there at American Top Team. And Danny Sabatello is one of these guys, though. If he can keep stringing together wins, he will be the next great fighter at American Top Team. I'm just saying, I favor Danny Sabatello against a lot of these guys in this bantamweight division. I haven't even talked about his opponent, Leandro Higo, yet. And, respect to Higo. He's a good fighter. He beat Caldwell by split decision in his last fight. He does have a solid ground game, but I just don't think he's going to be able to keep up with the constant pressure that Danny Sabatello is going to bring. I know Higo's got great defensive submissions. I know he's great off his back, but the pressure and the cardio that Danny Sabatello does have is going to make this fight extremely difficult on Leandro Higo. I am interested to see, though, Higo versus Danny Sabatello in a fight that is going to go 5 rounds. It's a 5-round fight. Titan FC, when they have their championship fights, I believe, are only 3 rounds. So he's going to be taking on, Higo in a fight that will be 5-minute rounds because it is a Grand Prix fight. But I think Sabatello will be able to condition himself well enough, and I think he's well equipped enough to beat Leandro Higo. There's a reason he's a minus 550 favorite going into this fight. He's going to out-grapple Higo, and he's going to stay out the way of the submissions Higo will present off his back. I think Sabatello is that good with his positioning where he's able to avoid those certain positions that Higo will have some advantages in, and that's why I think the Italian gangster in Danny Sabatello will advance to the second round of the Bantamweight Grand Prix. He's probably going to drop a ton of F-bombs after he wins this fight, calling out his next opponent, but I really do like Danny Sabatello. I really want to see him and Raufeon Stotts in the finals. That's the fight I want to see. We'll see if we get it or not, but I'm going to go Danny Sabatello to win this one by unanimous decision. I think he wins every single second of every single round. 50-45 for the Italian gangsta. Give me Sabatello again by unanimous decision. Main event time, Gegard Mousasi versus Johnny Eblen for the 185-pound championship here, of course, with Bellator. Now, Johnny Eblen's got a chance to win this fight. Mousasi, if he's, shown a weakness as of late, or really just in his entire career, it has been the guys who are constantly pressured with the wrestling and are heavy grapplers. I mean, you look at his only loss in Bellator, it is to Rafael Lovato. Lovato beat him by majority decision. We know what Lovato does well. He's a tremendous BJJ guy. He's got a tremendous ground game. And like even the guys that Mousasi had trouble with in the UFC, I know, Uriah Hall spinning back kicked him in the face, but that was a while ago, and that was probably Uriah Hall's best performance of his career, honestly, maybe other than the Anderson Silva win. And, he had some trouble with Chris Weidman, but, Gegard is winning the fight against Weidman. Weidman was having success on the ground, though. He was taking down Gegard, and, of course, Gegard hit him with the knee, which was, were both the Weidman's hands on the ground? Were they not? I don't know. That's a weird thing. Go rewatch that fight from UFC 210 on Fight Pass, but Gegard has been so good in the UFC, in Bellator since leaving the UFC after beating Weidman. He comes in, he beats Carvalho, he beats Roy McDonald for the belt, and then of course, he wins the belt for Carvalho, and then he beats Rory McDonald to defend the championship. He loses to Lovato, then beats Lyoto Machida, gets the title shot against Douglas Lima for the vacant belt, wins it, defends against John Salter, defends against Austin Vanderford, and he looks so good in the Vanderford fight. Austin Vanderford truly looked lost in there after Gegard Mousasi hit him once. It's just the power that Gegard's got, and I think it's the thing where people seriously think that Gegard would have a chance against the top level guys in the UFC, and I'm not disputing that. I think Gegard Mousasi is still a top 5 middleweight in the world. I think he runs circles around a lot of these guys that Bellator just have at 185, and Gegard's gonna be looking for win number 50 in this fight. Will he get it against Johnny Eblen? Probably, but Johnny Eblen again presents a style against Gegard Mousasi that is, concerning for Gegard, because Eblen is a constant pressure wrestler. He's always looking for the takedown. He throws big winging overhands on his way in and in his entries. That's what Eblen will do in his entry-level strikes to get to Gegard in this fight. You've seen the big knockouts that he has got in the past, given there's only 2 of them in Bellator so far, but that's what he will do as entry-level shots to, again, securing the takedowns, because all of his opponents are scared of the takedowns that Eblen will bring. Hands down, big shot over the top, and that's what does allow Eblen to knock out his opponents. He's got a lot of power in the hands. He wasn't able to finish John Salter, but he beats him by unanimous decision 3 months ago to secure this championship opportunity against Gegard Mousasi. But the narrative going into the Gegard Mousasi fight in his last one against Austin Vanderford was, okay, maybe Vanderford's able to take him down, maybe Vanderford's able to keep him down, and maybe he's able to submit him. It wasn't able to do so. Again, Mousasi hit him once. Vanderford was like, oh my goodness, this guy's got more power than I thought he did. And he was just lost out there. Again, Gegard finishes Vanderford in 2 minutes. I think Vanderford's about the same level as Johnny Eblen. I think Eblen's maybe a little bit higher, but again, I just don't think Eblen's got too much of a chance in this fight. I think Gegard's going to beat him. I truly think Gegard Mousasi is going to retain his championship here. I think all around he's the better fighter than Johnny Eblen. Yes, maybe Eblen will have some success in the grappling, but I think Mousasi, after seeing a couple takedowns from Eblen, will be able to stuff those. I think he'll keep it on the feet, and eventually in the second round, I think he will find a way to end the night of Johnny Eblen, ending his undefeated run. Eblen's going to go to 11-1, and Gegard Mousasi is going to pick up his 50th win in professional MMA, finishing Johnny Eblen in the second round by TKO. Retaining the belt, and again, I don't know who's next for him at 185, but I still think Gegard Mousasi holds onto the strap and still your world champion. And folks, thank you all for watching our Bellator 282 predictions here on the channel. If you haven't yet, though, make sure that subscribe button down below for some more MMA here on the channel. Go check out our PFL and UFC predictions posted earlier on the channel as well. Again, both those links will be in the description down below. Again, folks, thank you for watching, and Mamba forever.